It was an ordinary Wednesday morning when the letter showed up in my mailbox, a thick, official-looking envelope stamped urgent legal notice. My stomach dropped. I wasn't in any trouble that I knew of. Still, I tore it open right there by the curb, my hands trembling slightly. Inside was a lawsuit. The Lakeside Meadows Homeowners Association was suing me for $3,200 in unpaid HOA dues. The problem? I didn't even live in Lakeside Meadows. My home was on the next street over, outside their community, outside their rules, and definitely outside their jurisdiction. I read the papers twice, then a third time. It didn't make sense. My name, my address, even my property description were listed correctly. Somehow they'd decided my house was part of their HOA, despite the fact that it was built 5 years before their development even existed. I drove over to the Lakeside Meadows office to clear things up. The place looked more like a private fortress than a neighborhood. Association, tall iron gates, a glass front office, and a smug-looking woman at the front desk wearing a name tag that read, Cheryl, HOA President. When I explained the situation, Cheryl's polite smile turned cold. If you own property within our boundaries, she said, you're responsible for dues. It's that simple. But I don't, I insisted. My property isn't part of your plat map. She folded her arms. Our records say otherwise. Pay up or see us in court. And that's when I realized they didn't care about facts. They cared about money and control. Over the next few days, I gathered every document I could find. My deed, my subdivision plat, even old city zoning maps. Everything proved I was not in their HOA. But the more evidence I collected, the more aggressive their lawyer became, sending threatening letters, calling my workplace, even posting notices on my front door like I was some kind of delinquent. Neighbors started whispering. Some thought I was in trouble. Others said the HOA had gone too far before. One man even told me they'd forced a widow to sell her home last year over fence color violations. That night, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by paperwork, my anger boiling over. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about standing up to a group of bullies who thought they owned the whole neighborhood. I made up my mind. If they wanted a court battle, they were going to get one. The courthouse smelled faintly of old paper and disinfectant. I stood there clutching my file folder, proof that I didn't belong to the Lakeside Meadows, HOA, and tried to steady my breathing. It wasn't fear exactly. It was disbelief that I even had to be here. Across the room, Cheryl sat at the plaintiff's table, dressed like she was attending a royal banquet instead of a civil hearing. Her lawyer, a slick man with perfect hair and a permanent smirk, whispered something that made her laugh. They looked confident, too confident. When my case was called, the judge, a stern woman named Judge Morales, adjusted her glasses and asked, Mr. Walker, you're representing yourself? Yes, Your Honor, I said. Because I can't afford to pay thousands of dollars to defend myself against something that isn't even real. That got a few murmurs from the audience. The HOA's lawyer stood first, spinning a story about how my property benefited from their community. Services like landscaping, street lighting, and maintenance. Therefore, he argued smoothly, Mr. Walker is obligated to contribute, just as any other homeowner. When it was my turn, I handed the judge a copy of my property deed. My home is in Maple Ridge Estates, not Lakeside Meadows, I explained. The HOA was formed 3 years after my house was built. They have no authority over me, and their so-called boundaries don't include my lot. The judge examined the papers quietly. This deed does appear to predate the HOA's charter, she noted. The lawyer quickly jumped in. But, Your Honor, the county assessor's office lists his property under the same zoning overlay. I interrupted, unable to hold back. Because the HOA manipulated the map when they filed their documents. They redrew the borders themselves without city approval. I have the original zoning maps right here. That made the judge raise an eyebrow. I handed her the proof, official maps showing the HOA's territory, ending 2 streets away from my house. The courtroom fell silent. Cheryl's confident smile had vanished. Judge Morales leaned forward. Mr. Walker, if these documents are accurate, this association has overstepped its legal boundaries. She turned to the HOA's attorney. I want a full explanation, and quickly, the lawyer stammered. Cheryl's face turned red. The judge gave them 2 weeks to produce evidence proving I was part of their association. As I left the courthouse, I felt a wave of relief, but only for a moment. I knew they wouldn't give up that easily. HOAs like this didn't just back down. They doubled down, and I was ready for whatever came next. The following week, I dove deeper into my investigation. If the HOA was bold enough to sue someone who wasn't even under their authority, what else had they been doing behind the scenes? I started with public records. The county clerk's office was quiet that morning, filled with the soft hum of computers and the smell of coffee. I requested every document tied to the Lakeside Meadows. Homeowners Association, their formation papers, boundary filings, amendments, and complaints. When the clerk wheeled out the stack, I was stunned. It was nearly a foot tall. Buried inside the paperwork, I found something that made my stomach twist. The HOA's original plat map had no mention of my street. But 3 years later, a corrected version appeared, hand-signed by none other than Cheryl Benson, the HOA president herself. The problem? She wasn't even authorized to file zoning corrections. Only the city planning board could do that. Her map had never been approved. It was completely fake. It got worse. Several homeowners inside Lakeside Meadows had filed complaints against her leadership over the years, accusing her of misusing HOA funds, charging illegal fees, and even threatening residents with foreclosure for tiny rule violations. Every time someone pushed back, she found a way to silence them. When I confronted one resident, an older man named George, he told me what happened when he tried to expose her. "She fined me for having an unauthorized mailbox," he said bitterly. "Then she put a lien on my house. I almost lost it over $200. That's when it clicked. Cheryl wasn't just a power-hungry neighbor. She was running the HOA like her personal fiefdom. And this bogus lawsuit against me was just another way to grab more money and control. I compiled everything into a binder, forged maps, financial discrepancies, sworn statements from residents, and copies of my own deed. I sent a copy to the court and another to the state's Department of Consumer Affairs, which oversaw homeowner associations. A week later, Cheryl's lawyer tried to contact me again. "Mr. Walker," he said with false politeness, "perhaps we can settle this privately." "Not a chance," I replied. "You sued the wrong man, and now the court's going to know exactly how dirty your client's been playing." His tone changed instantly. "You'll regret this." But I didn't flinch. I'd spent weeks being pushed around. Now I had the truth, and soon everyone else would too. The next court hearing was scheduled for Monday morning. And this time I wasn't just defending myself. I was going to expose them all. Monday morning came with a chill in the air, but I felt calm for the first time in weeks. My binder sat heavy in my hands, every page a weapon of truth. The courthouse steps echoed beneath my boots as I climbed them, knowing today would decide everything. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Word had spread through both neighborhoods, Lakeside Meadows, versus the outsider who wouldn't back down. Even a few local reporters had shown up. Cheryl sat at the plaintiff's table again, though her confidence was gone. She looked pale, fidgeting with her pen as her lawyer whispered nervously. Judge Morales entered, and the room went silent. "We're here to continue the case of Lakeside Meadows. Homeowners Association versus Daniel Walker," she said firmly. "Mr. Walker, you may proceed." I stood and laid out my evidence. One by one, I presented the fake plat maps, the financial irregularities, and the sworn statements from residents who'd been bullied or fined without cause. Each document landed on the judge's desk like a nail in the HOA's coffin. Then I handed her the original zoning map from the city, clearly showing that my property lay outside the HOA's boundaries. The judge examined it for a long moment. Then she looked up, her tone icy. "Ms. Benson," she said, turning toward Cheryl, "this document directly contradicts your association's claim. Care to explain how this so-called corrected map was filed?" Cheryl stammered. It must have been a clerical error. The judge wasn't buying it. An error that conveniently expanded your HOA's reach? And who signed this correction? "I did," Cheryl admitted quietly. Her lawyer tried to object, but Judge Morales cut him off. "Sit down, counselor. I've seen enough." The courtroom buzzed as the judge began her ruling. "This court finds that Mr. Walker's property is not and has never been part of Lakeside Meadows. Furthermore, evidence presented today suggests that the HOA has engaged in unauthorized filings misuse of funds, and intimidation of homeowners. She paused, letting that sink in. Therefore, I am ordering the immediate dismissal of this lawsuit. Additionally, I am referring this Association for Investigation and recommending its dissolution, pending review by the state's Department of Consumer Affairs. A gasp rippled through the room. Cheryl's face went completely white. Her lawyer sank back in his chair. I stood there frozen for a moment, then felt a wave of relief crash over me. It was over. The HOA that had harassed half the neighborhood had just been wiped off the map. As I walked out of the courtroom, a few neighbors clapped me on the shoulder. "You did it, man," George said with a grin. "You finally stood up to them." I smiled, looking back at the courthouse doors. "Yeah," I said. "And now everyone knows what happens when an HOA picks the wrong guy to mess with."